welcome to another episode of Uncommon Edge.
Growing up in a family like that,
things are always chaotic.
my whole life was integrated into our family business. I figured out how to deal with angry customers.
Right, and this was all at 13 years old.
We didn't get paid to work. I went there and it was absolutely miserable. I built a whole entire training system off of my knowledge that I learned from my mission. I sold $210,000 in coaching programs. We were doing 400 grand a year. We have over 160 employees and we're in the ballpark of like 60 million revenue.
The reason why we were able to do that is because we had the vision back in the day.
Keep executing, keep moving. Whether it's a half inch, a full step, whatever, always be moving forward. Hey, welcome to another episode of Uncommon Edge, and I have Mr. Ben Jordan of Action Plumbing sitting right here in the studio. Dude, thank you for coming on.
And it's an honor to be here. Every day I see you at the gym and the relationship we've had, over the last year has been amazing. So I feel honored to be here with you today.
It's been cool. Thank you. Thank you. And see, you make connections at the gym. Isn't that kind of interesting?
Oh man, every day it's interesting to me. So it's like, if you're not at the gym, you're not making those connections, you got something wrong with you.
And that's how we met. So I want to go back a little bit. Because in this past year, we've been little sidebar here, chit chat, little sidebar there, chit chat. Like, dude, your story is insane. And your family story, your business, I just want to unload and talk about a little bit of everything. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's go back to the beginning of like your family and how you were raised to now your business, and now you're down here in Arizona and you have Utah. Like, let's just unpack it and share your story.
Well, to start it off, give a little preference, right? I'm one of 14 kids, okay?
One of 14.
14, right? So I'm the third oldest. So there's 9 boys, 5 girls, right?
Oh my God.
So like in normal things, like normal life, right? If you had 2 brothers or 3 brothers, it was crazy, right? But like I have 9, there's 9 of us. 9 boys, 5 girls. And so growing up in a family like that, things are always chaotic, right? So like the fact that I got into plumbing and the fact that, I live the life that I live right now is all because of the chaos, right? So it's like my wife says that you live in a constant state of chaos. And I do, and I think it's just what I'm accustomed to. But
sure. It's
been, having a big family has been instrumental in my life, right? In everything that I do. But take us back to the very beginning. My dad was born in northern Mexico, right? And his mom brought him up when he was, I think, 9 or 10 years old, right? He had 10 brothers and sisters, and his dad died at a very early age. So when I grew up, right, since I could remember, right, since I could really remember, my uncles and my aunts were always living with us. Okay. So there was 14 of us, right? But before that, like his youngest brother is only 7 years older than me, and he raised him too. So wow. It's like he's another one of my brothers. And I have a couple of other uncles that lived all the way through high school into college with us, and so it was a huge family dynamic forever.
So to put a little perspective, so a little minor family get together, how many people? Just on the down low. Just an average, hey, Sunday, we're going to get the family together and have dinner. Like, how many people would be?
Probably at least 40 people. That's minor. Yeah. And I'll get into more of like how vast my family is in like a couple seconds. But like, so growing up, right, wow. My mom and my dad, right, they got married. My dad was 19 when he met my mom. My mom was a college graduate. She went to CSU right there, right? And she married my dad, and they started a business right away, right? I come from appliance repair. So back in the day, appliance repair was pretty big. It was kind of like TV repair back in the day.
Right.
But just like the TV repairmen, they phased out once these things were too easy not to just buy a new one.
It breaks, you just get a new one.
Same thing. Like appliance industry has just been going downhill over the last 20 years.
Sure.
So that's what I grew up doing, right? We fast forward to 2004, right? My mom gets really sick. Right? I'm in 7th grade. My mom gets really sick. She's expecting with my youngest my youngest sister. So my mom and my dad had 10 kids together, right? And my youngest sister, she's expecting with her, right? And my dad is working all the time. He's one of those guys, has always been working, doing everything. And us as kids, we lived on a ranch. My dad had about 600 acres. We lived on a ranch growing up. We worked at the shop when we weren't, doing things. I remember I was like 6 years old the first time I ever sold appliances. Right, my dad had an appliance shop in there, and I remember customers coming in, and I was like 6 years old the first time I ever was taking customers around and selling them stuff. So like my whole life was integrated into our family business. My mom gets sick. She was really intricate part of my dad's business, and she was sick for I would say probably a couple of years. And in those days, they didn't really like understand what was going on. They never, in Colorado, they're like, they thought she was having a midlife crisis. 10 kids, right? They're like, you probably had too many kids. So she had my little sister in September. December, she gets diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and she ended up dying the next March, right? So my dad was kind of freaking out at that point when she got diagnosed. He took her to the Mayo Clinic. They said, you pretty much have, 6 weeks to 6 months to live. And they're like, we pretty much can't do anything. And so he found a doctor that he knew about in Tijuana, and so he took her to Tijuana in like beginning of January. So January, my grandma comes to live with us, right? My dad's mom, she's a Hispanic lady. And, from January to March when my mom died, we saw her one time. No, we saw her twice. We went down one time and she came back one time. And so it was just, everything was just falling apart, right?
That was a lot of chaos going on, wasn't it?
13 years old, right? My oldest brother's 16, my youngest sister's 6 months old.
Yeah.
And my dad, right, he's always been just this kind of guy where he was always working, right? I'd never seen my dad, other than like when we were hunting or something, like cook food or do laundry. That was nothing that he ever did.
Right.
It was like something my mom always took care of.
Right.
Cleaning the house. You just like little things to when my mom passes away, now my dad fills into that role, and it's just really weird to us, right? And I remember because it was March, and March of that year, summer comes quick. And I remember he's like, hey, man, you guys, it's time to really get to work. Like, man, I thought we were working the whole time,
Right.
Because like you had your chores you had to do,
Sure.
like in middle school you're starting to understand, chores. And my dad was such a certain way, and I feel so blessed now. Back in the day, I always thought he was picking on me, but like now I'm like I understand the reason why he did things. But like I figured out that he taught us how to recruit way at an early age, because like when our friends wanted to hang out, he'd be like, yeah, you can hang out with your friends, but you got to go. We had a 40-acre pasture that he would bale. And he'd purposely bale them in small bales because he wanted to make sure that we would buck the bales. You can hang out with your friends, but you got to get it done. You can hang out with them after you buck the field of bales.
Right.
I mean, 40 acres, there's like 500 bales in there, right?
How long does that take?
And so it's like, well, we wanted to hang out with our friends. He's like, if they want to come over and help you, they can come help you. So we would recruit like crazy. We'd be calling our friends like, hey, my dad said we can hang out, we can ride the motorcycles, but we got to do this first, but it's going to be way fun,
Right.
It was terrible. I remember hooking up a gooseneck truck and trailer when I was like 9 years old, backing it up, hooking it up, driving in the field, And that was just the life that we had, and we were living. And then my mom passed away, intricate part of our whole entire lives, right? And it's like, my wife to this day, she's like, you don't have like I don't have that like thing in me where like that motherly love. I never got any motherly love,
Right.
So I was always on one side of my dad, and it just made me the kind of person that like I'm very radical about things. Like men put that into other men, and I'm so grateful that my dad was the way he was, because if he wasn't, I would be in a world of hurt.
Right.
But so she passes away in 2005, and we went straight to work. I remember that summer, my uncles would pick us up in the morning because they lived with us, right? But they would pick us up in the morning, and we would go to work at like 6 a.m. And I remember we were coming home at midnight, almost every night. We were working 6 days a week.
What kind of work is this at this
That's
point?
appliance repair.
Okay, appliance repair. So
And-
you're out and about for basically 12 hours or 18 hours of
All day.
appliance repair.
Yeah,
all day.
and we were and then that time we were working in the office because we were too young to drive.
Okay.
Right, but we would go in there and we would answer all the phone calls. And in those days, like it was crazy. I remember we would be rescheduling probably like 40 to 50 calls a night because we just couldn't get to them. And so we were answering calls all day. And I remember it was funny because they used to make fun of me. People used to call in and they'd be like, hey, we were just talking to Benita. because I had a little girl voice, a little kid voice. And like,
Benita.
they're like, Benita, like we don't have a Benita that works for us, and then funny, like down the road, they figured out it was me, but yeah, like I figured out how to answer phones. I figured out how to deal with angry customers, right? And this was all at 13 years old, right? And then we went from answering phone calls to dispatching, right? And then you figured out routes. And then you figured out like what type of calls, right? What kind of techs could do what kind of things, what guys were serious about sales, what guys weren't serious about sales, And this was all before I even got a driver's license.
As you were coming up through the ranks. Wow.
And this was my dad, right? And he put us in these positions. And I don't know if he like sat there and thought about it. And was
I was about to ask, like, was that intentional or it just kind of happened just because of your age? It's not like you could go out and do service calls. So you had to start somewhere.
Yeah. And I know that he wanted us to be in a position where it was like, hey, you guys have to do this. And it wasn't like, he was forcing us to it. It's like we wanted to do it, and that taught me it gave me a sense of ownership. Every job I've ever worked at, I've always treated it like it was mine. And it was because of from those days, right? It was my dad's company.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong, right? But like we didn't get paid to work. Right. So everything that we did was a sense of pride because it was my dad's. It was my dad's company, right? And it was my dad's company. Like, we're going to make sure this is the best thing. And like when I got to like 14 and 15 years old, right before I could drive, then I could start figuring out like what techs were good. And then I hated the office. I hated it. Like my mom's aunt, right? So she's my great aunt.
Okay.
She used to work for us. My grandma used to work for us. It was a family business,
Family
right?
business.
And to this day, she gives me crap. She's like, oh, you guys were always running off on me. And I would run in the back because I hated working in the office, right? I'd go in the back and I would start learning how to fix appliances. And I'd be back there soldering, 14-year-old kid playing with fire, it was easy. And so I taught myself how to solder. I taught myself how to fix appliances, right? I had to go back there and just tinker because my dad had a training program. He would train all the guys how to do it. And so I'd go back there and I'd just learn as much as I possibly could because one day I knew I was going to get let to go out and do my own thing, And when you were able to go out on the road, then you were able to sell and talk to the customers that you've been talking to on the phone for years,
Tie it all together. Yep.
And so I vividly remember I got my license, which I wasn't the smartest kid in the world, right? And I think I failed like driving test in Colorado. And at that time, my dad had gotten remarried. So he got remarried 2 years later to my stepmom, right? And she'd never been married previously. And she gets dumped into a world of 10 kids.
Wow.
And so my youngest sister is 2, maybe 2.5, right? Which at the time I was like, man, what the freak? I was kind of pissed at my dad. I'm like, why the hell are you getting married? It's like mom's been dead for 2 years and you're getting married.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I'm just like, how selfish was I, because I used to give him crap about it. And I won't say like I was disrespectful because my dad was not the kind of guy you were disrespectful to.
Right.
But like, I remember like, even at the wedding, I was looking at a picture the other day, like at their wedding picture, I was all like frowning, and I knew, I look back now and I'm like, God, you were a little a-hole,
Yep.
And I think about my wife now, like I would die tomorrow. If my wife wasn't here tomorrow, like I would freaking die. Like the amount of stuff that she does for me and for our kids and for our life, I can't even imagine it.
Different level of like, oh, now I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't imagine, like imagine, knock on wood, it's like, holy cow, what would that look like? And having 9 kids at the time? No, how many?
10.
Had 10.
Yep.
By himself. Never cooked, never did any of that stuff. The weight.
And it's so crazy is that
the weight on his heart must have been unbearable.
It was the craziest thing ever is that he never showed signs of it ever. It was like he never had emotion towards it, right? He never like slacked off. Every week we would go to church, right? And we'd get there an hour early. We'd sit in the front row, right? Like there was a front pew and then there's the next pew and there was all of us and we would line up all the way down, right? And my dad was like really strict about like made sure you had your tie on, made sure your shirt was right? Your shirt was tucked in. You made sure you wore long socks, right? You didn't show up looking like a bum. And when we show up, we would help set up chairs and we would do all the stuff an hour early. And then we would leave an hour late every day, right? And he would make us do like sign up for choir and just little things. It was like, and he never deviated from it, ever. It was always the same thing. And it was like, and it was throughout the whole entire period. The only thing that he ever did when my mom passed away that I look back now and just like, is that I remember he, for like the first 6 months, sometimes he would just lock himself in his room and you hear him running on the treadmill for hours. He would just run on the treadmill. Really? And my dad was a big guy. I mean, he probably lost 85 pounds when my mom died, and like freaking, he would just run on the treadmill. And like, I look back now, I'm like, holy crap, he's got 10 kids, right? Now his mom is living with us, helping raise the kids. Like my youngest sister, Stephanie, her first language was Spanish. Yeah, like for the longest time, because we didn't speak Spanish, right? Uh-huh. And I understood it, right? I could understand it after a while. And like my sister Stephanie, like her first language, like that's all my grandma ever spoke to her, was Spanish and Spanish and Spanish, right? And then she got older and she forgot it because she didn't use it. But my dad gets married to my stepmom. They have 4 more kids, right, throughout the years. But going into high school, it was a thing like where my mom wanted us to go to a good school. We lived in a small town, and my dad and my mom were very particular about where we wanted to school. And so the school that was in our hometown was a little tiny school, like a 3A school, right? Okay. And my mom always wanted us to go to a bigger school. So my dad worked it so we could go to this high school, as a 5A school. And my oldest brother was in high school at the time, my second oldest brother, Daniel, and then I was in 7th grade. And so when the time came, I ended up going there. And it was probably a 30-minute drive we took every single day.
Wow.
Yeah. And throughout the whole process, right, and in Colorado, in the church, right, I'm LDS, but in the church, they have early morning seminary. Like in Utah, it's a class for them. For us, right, and everybody that's not there, you had to do an early morning seminary. And that started at 6 a.m. because I think, it started at 6 because classes started at like 7:45, right? So you'd go and you'd do early morning seminary, and then you'd go from early morning seminary to your first class, right? And it wasn't at the school, so then you had to drive. But like my dad was super particular, like made sure like you're going to go to seminary.
Do not miss that.
Yeah, and we had animals too, right? So like when we had our animals, like when it snowed, when it was hot, you had to make sure and feed them in the morning. So got up in the morning, fed the animals, make sure animals are taken care of, drive to seminary, go to seminary, then go to school, right? And then we had sporting practices afterwards, right? And then if like sporting got over in time, we would go to the shop. And we would work at the shop. We'd answer calls, or we'd go. I remember I cleaned the bathrooms, and I was always like, why the heck am I cleaning the bathrooms? I'd clean the bathrooms until I was like 18 years old. And that was just the thing. It was like, hey, if you're going to be a part of what we're going to do, there's nothing that any of us are too good to do.
Obviously you're hearing this connection here, okay? Work ethic was instilled in you.
Oh, man.
Like it's like learn how to breathe and work ethic. And then everything else was like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Mm-hmm. What do you think today now with your business? Is that your go-to? Is that how you rely on things?
I tell a lot of people it's like there's no bad days. Like I don't have bad days, and that's what being a little kid and working like that,
Mm-hmm.
It's like you learn to not have bad days. You can have a bad hour, you can have a bad minute, but like I don't have bad days.
Yeah.
It's like because I figured out early on, it's like however hard you're willing to work, right? You can adjust whatever the day throws at you.
Right. I mean, you get a flat tire. Oh, that's a bad moment. Mm-hmm. It's just that inconvenience. At the end of the day, you're still alive. You're breathing. Like, what's so bad about it?
And that's what my mom dying taught me, right? I literally thought time was going to stop. I literally thought it was going to stop, and we were going to be able to figure out life, and then it would go on again, and it doesn't stop for anybody. Wow. It doesn't matter how influential or how powerful or however much influence they have on you, it's like it will not stop. And, for me as a kid, it's like I had to figure that out early on. And it's like my dad never talked about it. It wasn't those things like he was like, okay, we're going to do this and that. It was just like, hey, we have to move so fast.
Keep executing, keep moving, keep that, whether it's a half inch, a full step, whatever, always be moving forward.
And like, even in high school sports, right? Like earlier you were talking about, and you told your daughters that you weren't paying for college, same thing. Yeah. Like my mom wanted us to go to school, right? She wanted us to go to school. My dad said, if you're going to go to school, you're going to figure it out. And he was so consistent in that stuff. I remember my junior year of high school, I wanted to go to like the toughest wrestling camp. It was called J-Rob Wrestling Camp, right? And you could only pay for it online. Well, we were allowed to have a bank account, but we weren't allowed to have a checking account. We were allowed to have a savings account, but not a checking account. So I said, hey, Dad, I saved up the money, right? I figured out where the camp was. It was in Ashland, Oregon, right? So I had to fly to Oregon and do all this stuff, but I'm like, I can't pay for it. I don't have a card. I'm like, can I use your card? And he says, no. I'm like, Dad, I got the money, though. He's like, no, you figure it out. So I remember I literally went to my friend's mom, gave her the cash. She gave me the card. I paid for the camp, right? And then, right, I had to figure out flights to get up there, which the bishop in our church, he worked for United. And so he would give me standby flights, right? And so I got a standby flight from him, flew to Oregon, right? And then when I got there, it was before Uber.
Wow.
It was way before Uber. And so like I had to get a ride from the airport to the campus, right? To do the camp, which was probably one of the most miserable camps ever. It's like you'd run like 6 to 8 miles a day. And the last day you're there, they run a 12 miles, 6 miles out, 6 miles back.
Holy cow.
And once you get done with that, right, you get your shirt, right? Everybody wants the shirt. It says I did it, right? And if you had that at a wrestling tournament, like they knew who you were, right? And so like you're doing all that, and my dad, I swear he purposely did this. Like he scheduled to go to Baja, California, and they took all the motorcycles and all the ATVs and everything, because my dad has beachfront property in Baja, California, right? Uh-huh. And it was that week, the 2 weeks that I went to that camp, he was like, "Oh, we're going on vacation to Baja." I'm like, "You're kidding me!" Like I wanted to go so bad, you know. He was like, "No, you got to go to your camp." Like, well, if you want to quit, you can come to the camp, you know. Ooh. I'm like, I'm not quitting, you know. Like, no way. And that was the thing. He's like, you can be a quitter and come with us, or you can go to the camp and. You know, and so I went there, and it was absolutely miserable. And like, I couldn't call anybody because all my family was in freaking Baja.
Mexico.
Right? And I was just like, so I literally went through these 14 days of absolute hell, and I get home, right? Actually, I get back to the airport, and they're like, oh, your flight got canceled. We're going to have to fly you to San Francisco and then fly you from San Francisco back to Colorado. And I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life.
But you paid for it.
But I paid for it, you know, and I definitely wasn't going to quit. And that's just what he did, right? He had certain rules. It's like, you're going to graduate seminary, right? You're going to graduate high school. You're going to go on a mission, right? And when you get home from mission, you're going to get married. That was his rules. And so I said, okay. And like, the thing about like my dad is like, I never wanted to let him down, right? And he wasn't the kind of guy, it was his way or the highway, right? But it was never like, hey, you're going to do this because I said so, right? I remember when I was 16, one time I was getting testy, and he was like, we were getting ready for church, and he's like, I said, I don't want to go to church. He says, oh, really? I said, yeah. And I said, I'm not going. He said, no worries, right? But you're going to do this, 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 and this, and it was like impossible task, right? And he says, if you don't do it, by the time I get home, we're going to have a real big problem. And I knew exactly what that meant. I was like, actually, you know what? I will go to church. I said, perfect. He said, that sounds like a good idea.
I'll help with the chairs and I'll clean the bathroom. Yeah.
And that was a thing. And, so high school goes through, I work all the way through high school, and like I started making really good money in high school, right? The business started doing way better because they was having troubles. Like when my mom died, it's having troubles. The business started doing way better. I'm growing. And then once I started getting on the road and I could start making commission, right? And I was actually dealing with people, right? Like understanding how to talk to people.
Right.
And I get done with high school and I had scholarships. I took third at state in my senior year of high school. I was a heavyweight. So like, athletic heavyweights, they go play football, right? So like the number one recruited weight in all of wrestling and college wrestling is heavyweights, right? So like if you're good as a heavyweight and you don't go play football, like you get recruited pretty heavy. So I got recruited pretty heavily. And I remember because right after high school, it's like in those days it was 19 to go, but I was 18 in high school. So like right after high school, I was supposed to go. And I told my dad, I'm like, I think I'm going to go to a year of college first. And he's like, okay. And he's like, I got one question for you, right? And he said, this is the only question I'm ever going to ask you. He said, what's going to matter in 1,000 years? Oh. I'm like, what? I'm like, this guy's never, ever said this deep a thing to me in my entire life, right? And I just was like, holy crap, and I thought about it, because I always knew I was going to go on a mission, right? That was just a plan.
Sure.
Like I had it in plan. And he asked me that, and I was like, you know what? You're right. Like wrestling's gonna be over with, right? Like, I can't go pro in wrestling. Like if I come back, it's gonna pay for my schooling, and then it's gonna be over. And so I'm like, okay. So I went on a mission, and I promise you, besides like marrying my wife, it's probably the most influential thing I ever did in my whole entire life. There's not a day that goes by today that I don't see some sort of effect from my mission.
Really?
Yeah. Like incredible experience, right? Not just for the fact that, you're out there serving people, right? But
Sure.
that what I learned about people, right? Because, you're on a mission, right? We're out preaching, right? You're learning how to sell, right? And I knew how to sell, but I didn't know like
This
really,
level.
really how to sell,
Yeah.
right? And so like I get out there, and I went to Spain, right? I went to southern Spain on my mission. And so like I get out there, and things are hard, right? People are slamming doors in your face. And it's like, about 3 months in, I'm just sitting there, and I remember thinking to myself, like, why would God send me halfway across the world to teach a complex gospel in a foreign language? And I wasn't very smart. Like, I think I graduated high school with like a 2.0 or something like that. I was like pretty dumb, right? Like, I just was not a good student, right? And so like now I'm like out there and trying to teach these people. And like, I really figured out that he didn't send me out there to just ram stuff down people's throat. He sent me out there so I would physically change, and I like would change on the inside, and I would become the person that I needed to be. And the more I changed as a person, the better missionary I became. It was crazy. And then I figured out like how to win friends and influence people.
Right.
But I understood how to deal with people, how to talk to people, how to go into conversations and listen, right? Ask good questions. 2 years flies by. It's like the day I got there, and then the next day I left, it was like, it flew by that fast.
Start of the conversation.
It was crazy.
I mean, people don't realize how important to have right. It's not so much the business. Oh, what do I say? The word track or whatever. It's this. Just to be able to have a conversation. Like people don't understand. Like to be able to have a conversation with a complete stranger that's meaningful. Well, what do you mean? How do you do that? Well, by asking interesting questions. It's about the person, not you.
And having a genuine care about what they're going to say.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of times in sales, right? People, they ask the questions, but they don't really care what the people say.
No.
And it's like, that negates the whole question.
Because they want to go on to the next thing to get them closer to the bottom of the funnel or whatever the close or whatever it may be. And it's very fascinating. I see that a lot in real estate. Someone, my family and I are moving here, and that's great. So what are you looking for? A 3-bedroom, 2-bed? The person just said family. Did you not ask like how many children or what's their ages? Are they going to school? Like that's meaningful, because if you have kids, everyone loves to talk about their kids.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting you bring that up. So get me, okay, so you go on a mission, you come back. Where does this plumbing thing come in? Where does that come into play?
Yeah, no, it's literally, it's crazy how it played out. But I came home, I got home in December. I met my wife in March, right? And we never met her. I'd never met her before. I never talked to her before. My sister and her were friends. My sister was in college in Idaho. They were friends, and my sister says, hey, I got the perfect girl for me. She would send me a text message probably every other week saying she had the perfect girl. And I'm like, finally it was just...
It's your sister, for God's sake. Like,
it finally got to the point, I'm just like, I didn't even pay it any mind. And then she texted me like 2 weeks later, and she's like, hey, did you call that girl? I'm like, no, I didn't call her. She's like, she's really interested. I'm like, okay. So I finally texted her, right? And we started talking, and we met in March. We got engaged in April, right? It's crazy how it worked out, but like we met in March, and then, I knew immediately. Immediately. Like I knew within the first week, right? I think I bought a ring like a week after I actually met her for the first time. And then I waited for 3 weeks to meet her family. The first time I ever met her dad and her mom, I asked her dad to marry her.
no kidding.
And they're from LA, right? Typical family. They got 2 kids, great people, amazing people, right? And I literally the first time I ever met them is when I asked them to marry. And so my wife was getting done with her semester, and I said, hey, why don't you just come to Denver? We'll plan the wedding. Everything will be good, right? So her dad and her mom drive her out to Denver with all of her stuff, right? And they get there, and this is how naive I was, but it was 4/20, the year Denver legalized marijuana. So I tell them, they show up that day, right? And I'm just like, oh, sweet, like, you guys want to go see the town? We're driving around. It's like this parades are going on, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? You know, it was literally the day that they the year they legalized.
That was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
For those that have never seen that, look it up. Like it's like a haze.
Oh, it was ridiculous. So we got engaged 4/20 the year that they legalized marijuana in Denver. So it's like, you know, like that's how naive I was. Then we ended up getting married in August, right? And I took a scholarship right there. There's a school in Southern Colorado. I took a wrestling scholarship, and I started going to school, and you know, being married, school, and my wife was going to school. She was trying to finish up, and I was just like, I wasn't learning anything. Like nothing about school I was learning anything. And like wrestling's a full-time job in college, right? So I was like, I didn't have enough time to work. And I knew I wanted to start a family, right? I told my wife when we got married, like, hey, I want to have a family.
Right.
That's why we got married. And my wife had a really bad miscarriage, like really bad. I mean, almost died. And that scared me so bad. And I was just like, you know, what are we doing here? So I literally left college, right? I left college. I went to work with my uncle in Utah. So I was in Colorado, and I left, and I went to work with my uncle in Utah. I was like, man, I need to get out of Colorado. And so I left, and he was doing HVAC and appliance repair, right? And my older brother Daniel and I, we went at the same time. And which in our culture, right, is really taboo. Like my dad and I, we had about a 5-year stint where he was mad, like, because you don't leave family business. It's kind of like you know, Hispanic culture,
Right.
you know, it's like
Yep.
really tight
Yep.
knit, right? It's like you don't leave. And I told him, like,
What do you
Dad,
mean you're moving away? What?
Yeah.
Going across state lines? Like,
And I told him, I was like, Dad, like, I need to do something bigger. I have to do something bigger, right? And he's like, no, you guys need to stay here. Like, we have something going on. I'm like, Dad, this is not going to be sustainable for what we need, right? So we fought for 5 years, right? But like when we go to Utah, I'm working with my uncle, and I'm just like, man, there's got to be something else.
and that's your dad's brother?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I told my uncle, I'm just like, I remember driving down the road when I was 6 years old, and my dad says, you see that bank right there? That bank, I know the plumber that owns that bank. I remember I was 6 years old. I'm like, holy crap, you know, plumbers own banks?
What?
And then I remember I was like thinking to myself, like, why aren't we plumbers, you know? And then, right, fast forward to now I'm 22 years old, right? I'm in Utah, and I tell my uncle, I'm like, hey, we need to get into plumbing. He's like, yeah. And he had a great business, and my brother and I, we came to work for him. We took over, right? It's like one of those things, like we understood business, right? I would say I understood business, right? We understood that business.
Right.
And we understood how to lead teams, right? The mission
Yep.
teaches you all of that.
Yep.
Teaches you how to deal with people, lead teams, everything. And recruiting was one of our strong points,
Yep.
right? But what we didn't have was plumbing. And in Utah, right, it's really cliquey. The way the licensing works, right? You can't just, I couldn't come up to you and be like, hey man, like, will you qualify for me so I can run my own plumbing company? Because if I do something wrong, then you're going to lose your
Sure.
license and blah, 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 right? And so like nobody wanted to give us a shot. So I remember we were working on a job, and the plumber that owned the company that I ended up buying, right? He was working on the job, and he says, hey, he's like, or we approached him, we're like, hey, like, would you ever like want somebody to work for you? He's like, what kind of experience do you have? And we're like, well, we know HVAC, we didn't know any plumbing. And guys, he was just like, man, honestly, like, I don't really have any room for people that don't know how to work, right? Like, you got to be able to know what you're doing for me to give you a van. And we're like, freak, you know? And so the next call, my brother goes to his job, and there's a water heater, right? We're working on HVAC, and the water heater's having problems. So we sell the people the water heater, and we call them up. We're like, hey, we got a water heater for you. He's like, what? Yeah, we got a water heater for you. We need you to come do it. So the guy came, like, the whole value thing, right? It's like, people don't understand value. The art of sales is who has the most value, right? So we built up this value for him, came in, he ends up giving me a job. I convinced him to give me a job. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be good. First job I ever go to work. I quit my job with my uncle. I go to work for him, right? And this time I got my wife, right? And my wife's, we already had our baby.
Okay.
My oldest daughter was born in April. I started working with him, you know, like March.
Okay.
And so like, I told him, I'm like, I have a kid, you know, I have, you know, my wife, I have a house, you know, I need to make this work. I quit my job. My uncle was mad too, right? Back to the same family
Yep.
thing. So he's mad that I quit. And so I go to work for this guy, and first job we go, he's like, hey, I got a toilet. You install a toilet. We're working downstairs on a remodel. So I installed a toilet, and I forgot to put the seal. No, the seal in between the tank and the bowl, you know, that little like
Yep.
rubber gasket. Forgot to put that in there, put it on, flush the toilet, and it goes poof, water everywhere. And it starts leaking through the floor down in the basement. He comes upstairs, like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, well, I forgot this thing. No worries. I got all cleaned up. And that day he tried to fire me. He like took me to a restaurant and he's like, man, honestly, you don't really know what you're doing. I can't have that. And I literally looked him in the eyes and I was like, if you fired me, it'll be the worst mistake you ever make. I said, because I'm the kind of guy that will come into people's companies and I'm not here just for a job. I'm here to freaking make something happen here. And so he was like, what? And I said, I'll prove it to you. I said, I'll drive my wife's car. You send me whatever calls you want. I'll drive my wife's car. I'll prove it to you. So if you ever imagine a plumber showing up to your house in a Camry, Toyota Camry, right?
Yeah.
That was me, right? I worked for
my truck is in the shop, but don't worry about it. So what's going on here?
Literally. And so like I showed up jobs for like 2 weeks and I sold like you wouldn't believe. And he was like, okay, this guy's the real deal, right? So I ended up working for him for the like next 10 months. And we approached him after like 5 months and we're like, hey, we'd love to buy your company. And he's like, okay, well, we're going to work something out. He wanted out anyways, but he's like, I need a certain amount down and then I'll owner finance it. We convinced him to owner finance us, right? We didn't have any money.
Right.
So I remember that we had a friend of a friend, the lady needed a repipe under her house. So I called him. I'm like, hey man, because side work in the trades is huge, right?
Yeah.
I never wanted to offend him. So I said, hey man, I have a friend of a friend. Lady wants us to do a repipe. Can I use your van? I'll pay for all the parts. He's like, dude, whatever you do on your time I don't care. Like, just don't use my stuff. I'm like, sweet. We took the van over there. I did the repipe. It was in a crawl space. And I wish that we could bring up a picture of what I used to look like, but I was 400 pounds, right? And these crawl spaces are 2.5 feet tall, right? So you imagine this big dude like me, right? Sliding around all night long, because I worked all day, all night long doing a repipe. And in Utah, it's cold, so you have to make sure to get everything up in the joists, the insulation, right? It has to be done right. We did this repipe, and when we were there, one of the neighbors comes over and is like, hey, will you take a look at mine? So my brother goes over there, sells her the repipe.
Stop it.
And so we're like, holy crap. And we did hers, and then the next one, they needed a repipe, and the next one. So we spent...
That was your seed money? Was that your seed money?
Oh, yeah. We spent the next year. I would work all day, right? For my guy working plumbing. I'd work all day, and then I'd work all night doing repipes, and then I would go back to work, right? And then I would work, and I would sleep that night, and then I would do it all over. And we did that for a year straight. All day, all night, all day the next day, and then I'd sleep one night. All day, all day.
So let's get some perspective. What kind of money was that? Was that like your first... Were you making some good money at that point?
I mean, I was making okay money, right? But back in those days, we were selling those repipes for like $3,000, right?
Oh my God.
And I mean, the parts on them, we were probably $800, $900 in parts, right?
Okay.
And then I had a couple of helpers we'd help out, right?
Yeah.
So we were making probably $1,700 profit per one,
Yeah.
And you're working all night long. But we just started saving up. I was
Building
making
it.
good money in my job too, and my brother was working. So like we saved up. Finally, he wanted $70,000 down. So we worked up enough. We gave him $70,000 down, and we bought 3 vans. There was 3 vans, a name, phone numbers, and a small client list, right? And we were doing $400,000 a year.
And what year was that?
That was 2015, November of 2015.
2015. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to today.
We have over 160 employees, and we're in the ballpark of like 60 million in revenue.
Wow.
And it's like it exploded so fast, right? And we're in multiple states, right? And the thing is the reason why we were able to do that is because we had the vision back in the day, right? We knew what we wanted.
You were 6 years old, for God's sake.
Oh my gosh, dude! I'm telling
Dude,
you,
that is so Is that bank still there?
Oh yeah.
You should probably go back and take a picture in front of it or something.
I need to.
And then when you get a bank, then you can stand in front of your bank.
Well, I never understood it, right? Back in those days, even when I was 22 starting a business, I never understood that plumbing is old American business.
Yes.
Never going anywhere, especially service, right? In the service world, right? You fast forward to 20. So we ran from 15 to 2019, right? And my brother ended up leaving in 2018. And me and him were running together. He's like, man, I'm going to Texas to start up a company down there. I said, sweet. So he left, right? And then I brought in I started recruiting pretty hard. I brought in my little brother, John, which one of the most, like the best things I ever did. I brought in my brother, Matthew, my brother, John.
Oh, I love it.
One of my really good buddies that I grew up with. We were in the same ward growing up, Alex, and then my cousin, Theron, right? Those are my core group of guys right now. And they've been with me since 2019, right? But like I started just figuring out, okay, business is not as hard as I think it is, right? and we niched down into the type of plumbing we wanted to do. We started taking over market share. Fast forward to 21, right? The Action, I never owned Action. Action was a company that was in Utah, right? And when we got there, the funny thing is my dad's company was named Action. So when we got to Utah, I told my brother, I said, we're going to own that company one day. And they were the biggest plumbing company in the state.
Really?
Yeah. And so when the opportunity came for me to buy them, right, the lady actually called us and was like, hey, we've been watching you guys for a little while now. Like, I would really like for you to come to own our business. And they were spiraling downhill. COVID had happened. Sure. The husband got sick. She didn't really understand how to like manage the guys. The guys were taking advantage of her. It was spiraling out of control. So we took over, right? And we hadn't even blown up right then. You know, we were still really like doing about $5 million in revenue. But that year we bought Action and we closed the 14th of February. And from February to December, we did 17 million in revenue that year. And it was just like gas on the fire. It's like we had the systems and processes in place.
You were able to plug and play.
Yeah, we were ready to go.
What brought you? What was the trigger to come to Arizona? What was that piece?
You know, it was like the craziest set of events like it ever happened. But like Austin, right? He's one of my key guys here now. Him and I served a mission together, right? Got back, I recruited him to come work for me. And I told him when he first came on, I said, dude, my plan for you is not so you can be a technician of mine. My plan for you, right, is that one day me and you will be partners and you'll own one of our franchises. I said, probably Phoenix or, you know, one of those cities. He's like, oh, Phoenix, Arizona would be sweet, you know? And so like, rewind 2 years ago, right? I meet Andy and the team, right? And I'm like, I'm so attracted to this area, right? The Elliott Group has been instrumental in my life, right? Crazy. And so I join up with the Elliott Group, right? I start taking all their training and doing all their stuff and implementing little things that they're teaching me in my business. My business starts taking off even more, you know? And I'm like, holy crap, this is crazy. And so I bought a house down here. I'm saying, hey, I'm going to buy a house down here and tell my wife we're moving down here. So I called Austin and said, hey, remember I told you we're going to Phoenix? I said, we're going to Phoenix this year.
I'm here.
And I told him, I said, I really want to prove a theory. I want to prove a theory that we can go into any city with zero brand recognition and start up, right? And he's like, okay, you know, we came down, it was just me and him down here, right? We didn't have, we brought a couple of trucks down. We literally were on my couch for like 3 months. I don't know, renting real estate in Arizona is like one of the worst things I've ever done. It's crazy. Like it took us like 3 months just to rent somewhere.
Yeah.
And so like we found a place, but like we had no clue what we were going to do. We didn't know how to advertise here, right? We just understood that we knew how to run a business. We knew how to run a plumbing company because we've scaled one pretty good. And now we just barely put our 23rd truck on the road in 10 months.
No kidding.
Yeah, we're on track to do 12 million, right? Next year we should do in the ballpark like 17, I'm thinking. That's what projections are saying.
Wow.
And that's, you know, and Phoenix is a big market, right?
Yeah.
I love...
Fifth largest city. It's crazy. It doesn't feel like it though, does it?
No.
It's just spread out.
I love the market. It's just different. You know, Utah is super cliquish. You know, they advertise different up there. You know, so I said, hey, I want to prove our method here, right? And it's crazy because I got in with the Elliott Group, right? And I wanted to prove my method. So we proved it here. And then all of a sudden the coaching programs started coming up, right? Andy's like, why don't you teach this? Like nobody in your industry knows this stuff, right? And I'm like, holy crap, you know? So I'm like, okay. And I start taking, you know, the Built to Scale program. I started taking that program. And within 17 days, I sold $210,000 in coaching programs. I didn't even have a coaching program. It was just like people within my network are like, oh, like you're teaching this now?
Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap, you know? And so it's just been spiraling, like just going crazy since then.
So what and again, your story of your background of being how you grew up, starting the business in Utah. I mean, obviously you see this track record. So with some of your visions and what you were thinking, now are you kind of like, wait a minute, let me start a fresh page and go even bigger? Or where's the mind now for like 2026, 2027? Like where does Ben want to go with all this? You know,
I promised my team, and this is the thing, people ask me like, hey, how come you haven't sold to private equity? You know, private equity is buying up a ton of our industry right now. And I told them because I have an obligation to my team. I made a promise to my team, right? That I would take them to the next level, right? And it's like if I'm the only guy that ever makes any money on my team, it's like it's worthless, right? And so I haven't sold because I don't want them to dissect my team, and like my team members, right? I'm gonna take them and do what I did with Austin, right? Hey, we can go to Denver. Hey, we can go to Florida. We can go anywhere,
Right.
Where there's a need for plumbers. Right now, we're on track by 2030 to be 10 million jobs shy in the trades. Wow. So the value of a plumber is skyrocketing right now. It's actually going so fast that the income of people, household income, can't keep up.
Really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like when I first started doing plumbing, right, 10 years ago, we were selling a water heater install, 40-gallon hot water heater install for $1,200. Like today, we won't make any money if we're not selling for over $4,000. It's like, how is it going that fast, right? Since 2020, it cost me 5 times more. My employee acquisition rate is 5 times higher than it was in 2020.
That is insane.
Where the wages are going up, insurance is going up, right?
Yeah.
Like gas is going up, vehicle prices are going up, and so all of that factors in to what it costs for a plumber to get to your home, right?
Right.
And the last 40 years of this industry, right, we've trained our customers to hate us, right? I mean, we're like almost on like the used car salesman, right? Like when you think about calling a plumber, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get ripped off today,
Yep.
So it's like when we approach somebody's home, right? When we're going to their home, like that's their sanctuary, right? We're there. It should be like, oh, thank goodness you're here to help me out.
Yeah, let's get this flood handled. Or
they got the freaking shotgun by the door. They're just waiting for us to just trip up, So like we had to get really, really ingenuitive by the way we do our work, right? And the way that we run our program is completely different than anybody else does, right? Because in the industry, everything's transactional. I mean, that's in every industry, right?
Sure.
But it's like, how much can I get out of you today? Because tomorrow I'm not going to think about you ever again. Right. But I've switched it to focusing more on over one of our customers, right? The lifetime value of the customer. And, a third of our business is repeat business, right? Which allows us to do so much more for our employees, which allows us to do so much more for our customers, right? Because over the lifetime, imagine a customer, 10 years, they live in that home. How many times are they going to need a plumber, HVAC, or electrician?
1 to 2, 3 times a year. What is the?
I haven't figured out, right? Over a lifetime span, that customer will spend $80,000 with us in 10 years.
What?
$80,000.
That's insane.
Right? And so I've figured it out where I'm going to take my customers, right? And I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to take care of you today, and I'm all about getting to the root of the cause of the issue, right? When I show up to your home, if you have a drain that's plugged up, right, I'm going to figure out why that drain's plugged up. Because there's not a working drain in the world that needs maintenance.
Right.
So I'm going to get to figure out why it's backing up, because I don't want you to have to figure out when it backs up again, because the only time something's wrong with your drain is when it backs up, right? I don't want that to have to happen. And then not only am I going to do that today, but I'm going to schedule in that I'm going to see you 6 to 7 times a year doing maintenances to make sure that all the other stuff doesn't blow up on you. And you have to see me in a very, very bad state, right? So if I can take care of a problem before it happens, or if I can teach you about how things work to better take care of things and maintenance things, right? Get longevity out of your stuff.
So you're not the typical guy that shows up late.
No.
Doesn't have the right parts.
No.
And pisses everyone off.
Yeah. No, that's
See, that's been my, and again, me being in real estate and, I've flipped a lot of houses. I've had a lot of plumbers come and go in my life. And again, it's like, I know it has a bad rap, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, it's that up there with the used car salesman type stuff, and that's a hard one to break.
Oh yeah. And that the hardest thing is it's not cheap.
No.
So that poor service and expensive price sticks with you. Right, it's always there. And have we messed up? Yeah, we've messed up all the time, right? But we try, and the reason we've grown so fast and we've been able to scale so fast is because we're able to utilize, different parts, right? And we figure out where we messed up there. Okay, how are we going to fix it? Right. And it's like it has helped us so much, right? And just the different ways we run things it's just a lot different. And that's why we've been able to scale and grow so fast.
What's your goal here in Phoenix? Like, do you plan to go as big as you can, or are you going to segue into another city in the next 12 to 24 months? Like what is that piece?
Like our plan for Phoenix is huge, right? Right now we're running the whole valley. We're going to split it in two.
Okay.
Right? So we'll have an east and a west side, right? And then, Tucson, we're going to go to Tucson, right? And we're going to go to Flagstaff, Sedona, that whole area up there, and we really want to take over the market here. But like, I want to be able to utilize my guys in each location.
Right.
Right. Give them an opportunity to be the guy.
Yeah.
And like nobody wants to be the guy, but like everybody wants to be the guy at the same time,
Sure.
So it's like, it's hard, but
Well, it's like the
something-
next guy in line who's like, is he going to put me in? Come on, coach, put me in. Because they know the value behind what you do and how you do it, which is cool. Because again, that's that company culture, right? And geez, isn't it interesting? Where did you learn all this from?
My dad.
Your dad.
It's crazy. Like, and I talked to my dad the other day, and we went hunting in New Mexico, right? And he was just like, it's so crazy. I was mad at you for all those years, but I know for a fact you couldn't have been able to do what you're doing right now if you'd have stayed. Every one of my brothers right now, they all own multi-million-dollar plumbing companies.
Do they really?
Yeah, every one of them.
Were you the one that started the plumbing?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much majority of my family, right? Oh, I never told you about like the story of like how big the family is. When my mom passed away, right? When my mom passed away, I remember that night, that right before the funeral, they had all of the kids under age of 10 stay at my dad's house, and there was over 100 of them.
What?
Yeah. There was over 100 kids under the age of 10 stayed at my dad's house that night. So like family gatherings are huge, right? So my family's huge. My dad has a bunch of brothers, bunch of cousins, bunch of everywhere. And pretty much everybody is in plumbing now. It's been crazy, right? It's been the transformation, and we have taught them how to get into the business and how to do things and where to buy equipment, how to negotiate different prices,
Right.
how to sell it, right? I built a whole entire training system off of my knowledge that I learned from my mission, right? And we transferred it into plumbing.
Dude, such a cool story.
Oh man, it's been crazy.
Such a cool story.
I feel extremely blessed to be here, to be a part of it, Like it hasn't been the easiest thing ever,
It never is. And to be able to turn around and share that with your guys and your brothers and build them up as well. I mean, that's really what like you said, it's all great. You're at the top of the pyramid, and if no one else is making money, then what are you doing?
Oh man.
And to be able to provide that lifestyle and, the wealth that you can help others create as well, dude, that's really, hey, that will make a difference in 1,000 years, won't it?
Oh yeah. And like all the people that you affect along the way. And I think that's what he
Yeah.
meant by that. It's not just about you and the person you're talking to, right? Your message and what you've done for that person will
Yep.
trickle throughout their whole entire
Yep.
family. Wow. Like there's a kid that he just called me the other day. First job he really ever had, right? He never thought he'd ever make more than, 20 grand a year. And he called me just the other day. He's got his journeyman license, right? This kid's making great money. He's got a family. He's got a nice house. Drives nice cars, right? He just became a journeyman plumber. He's just like, dude, and it's crazy because I don't think about this stuff, right? But he just called me and he told me, he's like, man, I've been working for you for 6 years. I just barely got my journeyman plumber's license. I never thought that I was ever going to get out of my mom's house. Now my mom lives with me.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it's just like the ripple effect.
Impact.
People lose the thought of their why, right? The why they actually do things, right? In pursuit of their what, finding the what, right? The cars, the houses, the clothes, the materialistic things. And the why is really why we do things, right? Why we operate, why we are the people we are. So if you don't lose your why, right, in search of your what, right, the what will always be way better.
Woo! Again, Ben Jordan, plumber. I think you gave us a little more than just plumbing advice today, don't you think?
Yeah.
Great story. Again, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share that, because I think more and more people need to hear what's going on in these different industries that nobody knows about. And listen, if you're out there and you are in the plumbing world and you want to know more about Ben, listen, we're going to put all of his contact info down below in the comments and stuff. Please reach out to him. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure you'll take the time to
absolutely.
reach out. Here's the thing, guys. this is what we do. We talk about the things that are uncommon. That's what gives us this edge in life. And as you can see, Ben's story is amazing. And this just goes to show you, like, if you put your mind to something and you surround yourself with the right people, you can pretty much do just about anything. Listen, if you like this podcast, please hit the like button, subscribe. We're dropping heat every day of the week here, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Let us know your thoughts. Make some comments down below. And as always, let's make it a great day.